Hello, everybody. Well, we're going on another little trip. So, on April the 20th, we went on our way to go visit Karen's cousin Cheryl. So, we traveled south from Niagara area to the Catskill Mountains, and the first main stop we had was in Elliotville. Elliotville is the closest ski resort from Buffalo, and I always wanted to see it. And you can see it's still a bit of snow on the ground. It's kind of funny to see the snow on the ground, and on the other side of the hill, the flowers are popping out, and there's a lot of beautiful new chalets. You can see we're rolling through the Catskill Mountains. Of course, if you're born in the Rockies, you don't consider much of a mountain there, but when you're living in the flatlands, that's still nice and hilly. And the further south, we got more bushes in bloom, so it was very nice.
Here's a photo taking a trip back in time to when people would gather Sundays for get-togethers. You see Cheryl pinching her cheeks so that she can smile more, and myself in my father's arms beside my grandparents, my great-grandfather, Cheryl's mom, and Cheryl's dad, my mother's brother. So it must have been my mother taking the photo. Jumping forward in time, here we are 70 years later in a beautiful garden in Virginia of Thomas Jefferson. And Cheryl's pointing out to me the plants that we both admired.
And here we have Bruce and Terry. Bruce is Cheryl's younger brother, and Terry is his wife. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years ago. And here we have Cheryl's husband, Dave, who was 20 years in the Navy and did quite a few accomplishments. Looks like he and his team were instrumental in ending the Cold War, and I'm sure there's a lot of interesting stories. Actually, his achievements have been written up in a couple of books about the U.S. Navies in the Cold War, so he's quite an accomplished man. So Dave spent a lot of time in submarines, and I don't know how he did it, because that'd be claustrophobic for me. One interesting thing he told me that is after you spend 2 or 3 months on a submarine on a mission, when you come back, your eyes have to really adjust to the distance, because you're always in a close quarters, so your eyes kind of lose the long vision. Now, one of the tasks he ended up doing was recover bodies when the Air Florida crash happened, and he and his team were there for 12 days, and I imagine that was not a pleasant undertaking. Now, if you get a U.S. nickel in your pocket, you get a picture of Thomas Jefferson and Monticello, and is kind of how it looks from a different angle. Now, he was a tinkerer, and he actually had the weather vane on top of the portico, and if you look underneath, it had the sort of a dial that showed him which way the wind is blowing, and I thought it was rather interesting. Even though on the same token, it seemed to me always when the wind is blowing from the east or west, you kind of know just by stepping out the door. Whether you have a weather vane or not would really make much difference. Now, one thing that kind of puzzled me a little bit when you look at the property and it's a little bit hilly, and you ask yourself, how did Thomas Jefferson ever end up owning this property? Well, it's actually goes a little further back. He inherited land from his father at age 14, and it's just outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, in the Piedmont region. The plantation, which was originally 5,000 acres or 20 square kilometers, and Jefferson was using slaves for his cultivations, and it was predominantly tobacco and some mixed crops. And but also he started doing a lot of work on his house, and what surprised me is how much land there really was. And when he died, he actually ended up, or the estate ended up having to sell it because he had so much debt on the property. So he was an interesting man, but maybe not a good businessman. During his presidency as the third president of the United States, he still did a lot of renovations at his house, and actually he did that even in retirement until he died. He was always, I guess, improving and adding stuff. He had an extensive wine cellar. He also had a rainwater catchment system that he collected rain, and had a big cistern. I guess it was very important for his gardens to be able to water it. There's Karen checking out some of the paintings. And you can see he was very social, had visitors that came and were joining for a game of cards or checkers or whatever. He also managed to have a little dumbwaiter built in next to the fire, or built into the fireplace, so you can holler down, send me up another bottle. And this I found interesting was some paintings from the Niagara Falls, was before the tourists showed up. Rather interesting. As you can see, there was some beautiful vistas, and you can see why he loved that property. Great looking trees. I think that's it's not an oak, not a maple. I can't think of it now. Nice spring flowers. Of course, in Canada, we're still just putting the snow shovels away, and look at all the blossoms already. And you can see we're a bit of a high point. Unfortunately, it was rather hazy on the horizon, but you can see a lot of forested areas. And this is looking over the garden. And there was a building that they used to produce a lot of their clothing, etc. And I guess it also storage for the various crops that they grew. You can see how the hills in the background, but the gardens look lush. Everybody's cheerful. Nice spring day. Actually ended up being about almost 30 degrees Celsius, so it was very hot. A little slave cabin in the background. That was actually a vineyard, but it's a sorry looking vineyard. I don't think that the was very productive. And this is a little building that Thomas Jefferson apparently used to sit in the evening and enjoy the sunsets. And you can see how fairly big that vegetable garden. Of course, you got over 100 slaves. There's a lot of food. And then Karen asked me, well, how do you get all that land so level? Well, that's how it was done. You had to dig up one side and yeah, look at that lettuce, almost ready to be harvested. Another little slave cabin, as they call it, the Cottonwood Lane, and they had all this series of cabins. If you look at the logs, they're all hand hewn, but nicely dovetailed at the corners. And it looks like that tree could tell a few stories. And most of the clothes was actually produced on the property. I guess with all the people there and having the extra hand. Now this is a sports car at the time. He imported that from London, England, and it was apparently very fast, buggy, and he used it to go back and forth to Washington, 2-day trip. And here's the two good-looking ladies. Well, next day we traveled a little bit north and we visited Annapolis, which is on the Chesapeake Bay, and it's also, the way I see, kind of the cradle of the colonization of the United States in that area. It's where a lot of the early settlers came. But if you're a sailor or a boat owner, Annapolis is sort of a mecca for sailors, because that's where they have all the boat shows, and it's sort of where you want to hang out in spring and check out the latest and greatest comes to boating. And what I didn't realize, it has a lot of history, and so we had quite a pleasant time there. So we strolled along the waterfront, and you see across the bay there's some across the channel, I should say, some water taxis, and we got lucky. We had a nice sunny day and it wasn't too crowded, so we enjoyed it there. You can see there's some pretty big sized boats, and that's not even there's several marinas. And in the old part, you're looking up towards the old original City Hall, and then the State House. It's been here for a long, long time. And Isabel, one of the ships that got sunk in Hawaii, started the Second World War. That's City Hall, beautiful building, great majestic trees. You can see it's wild climate. Karen couldn't resist to smell the flowers. Oh, look, there's more over here. All azaleas. Various shapes and sizes. This is all azaleas, really rich colored, beautiful. Well, lunchtime comes around and Karen says, I gotta have one of those crab cakes. They're supposed to be super duper. So we went to Chicks and Roost Deli and had to line up a little bit, but Karen got her delicious lunch, and what's the best of it all, that was gluten-free. Well, then the other thing, she wanted to have her picture taken with Ruth Ginsburg. Huge mural, fantastic. Well, we're rolling on, and this is the last view looking over Chesapeake Bay, and we're heading north towards Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. Now, if you're like me, you probably wonder, how did that ever come about? Well, here's a bit of a background. The property where Winterthur sits was purchased by Lieutenant Irene Dupont between 1810 and 1818. I guess she kept adding acreage to it, and was used for farming and sheep raising. In 1837, the Dupont heirs sold 445 acres of the land to a business partner from France, Jacques-Antoine Biedermann, and his wife Evelina Gabrielle Dupont, for the purpose of establishing their estate. Evelina was the second daughter of Dupont's 7 children, and between 3942 they built 12-room Greek Revival manor house and property and named their estate Winterthur after Biedermann's ancestral home, Winterthur in Switzerland. The Biedermanns also added expansive gardens, livestock, and pasture. Interestingly enough, a lot of the furnishings and decor in the house was actually, they been looking around in the northeast United States, and just kept, every time a house or mansion got demolished, they ended up buying whatever was of interest, and ended up putting it into their home. So there's some rather beautiful furnishings in there that were not necessarily original to the house, but they were just added on over time. Look at that beautiful piece of furniture. There's some beautiful collections of fine china as well. Another well-crafted piece of furniture. Now, when we decided to go visit the place, we weren't looking to see the building. We were more interested in the garden, because that was sort of what we wanted to see, the early spring, as we were kind of tired of the drab snow, and we thought it'd be nice to also enjoy some of the azaleas and rhododendrons, and you can see they're just splendid. They even had a little Nomi garden there for the kids, and I guess it would be a fun thing to do. Now, the other thing was surprising was they had some of the greenhouses were abandoned. But Karen said, "Oh, look at the piping. My dad's greenhouses were just like that." And of course, no glazing in it. I guess over time it wasn't worth it to keep replacing the glass. And the coal frames kind of reminded me of our dad. We always had coal frames for the plants, protect them in the spring.
Heading back to the main lodge, we came upon a glade of unfurling ferns. It was so beautiful that the sun was out and we could almost see them unfurling. In the dogwoods were out, the flower of the state of Maryland. Beautiful stonework bridge, and on the other side I'm gazing up at a giant rhododendron. Just fantastic. Here, a little bit closer look. Get the size differentiation with me standing there, and and the plants. A little close up, the buds forming. And unfurled, just as beautiful as the ferns. We're not sure if this is a pink dogwood or if this is an azalea. The two horticulturists are still talking, but this is a white dogwood. And then at the end, back at the lodge, refreshment, drink of water before we begin to make the long journey home. Happy trails.
Our heartfelt thanks to Cheryl and Dave for such a happy reunion. May it not be so long till we meet again.